make these housing where they had places for inmates. But anyway, it's going to be important next week, and I think it's going to be important what Taura Pinkscher has to say and how they're going to present it. And the one thing that I kind of disagreed with, I think when I look at something, I like to look at a floor plan and what you actually are planning on building. Right now, we don't have that. We don't have any idea as what the floor plan is going to be. And without the floor plan, you cannot come up with a good cost. I know they mentioned the cost is approximate cost or a guess. And you present that to the community, and I think you're just going to scratch your head and say, well, it's not right. So those are two items that I think are very important. I personally, I don't think you're ready to present that in this coming election. I think there's a lot of work that's got to be done in between, but that's just my opinion. But anyway, thank you and have a good day.
Any other limited public comment? Hearing none. Various correspondence. Does any commissioner have any correspondence to share with the board? In case I did not mention it last week, the Carpenter property was not approved for the state ag preservation grant. They are going to pursue some grant funding through the federal government because they have a cycle that the property also qualifies under, just to see if we can move it that way instead of through the state. We would still be the supervisor of the easement rights as a county. So that we'll have more information on that at the end of the month after that cycle date is done.
Madam Chair, I would move for the approval of the February 25th, 2020 Board of Commissioners meeting minutes, approval of the March 3rd, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes, approval to increase the hours for the special part-time drain maintenance worker from 936 hours annually to 1,288 hours annually at a cost of $4,932 for the 2020 budget year, and to authorize the Drain Commissioner to enter into an agreement with the Berry County Courthouse Employees Association to extend the temporary increase in hours beyond 120 days. Approval to appoint Jennifer Heintzman, President of the Berry County Chamber of Economic Development Authority, to serve on the Berry County Brownfield Authority for the remainder of a 3-year term ending on December 31st, 2020. Approval to reappoint Craig Stolzenberg to serve in the position of Citizen at Large on the Berry County Tax Allocation Board for a 1-year term that begins April 1st, 2020 and expires on March 31st, 2021.
Second.
Motion by Connor, second by Parker, to approve the items listed under the consent agenda. Discussion is not allowed and a roll call is required. The clerk will call the roll.
Connor?
Yes.
Hager?
Yes.
Gibson?
Yes.
Jackson?
Yes.
Parker?
Yes.
Smoker?
Yes.
Wing?
Yes, the consent agenda is approved. Presentations. We have Steve Curry here with us this morning, and I was wrong, it's 9:08. We're 7 minutes ahead of schedule.
Well, I'll try to keep you ahead of schedule then. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Always love coming to Berry County. Also, you folks always are very participative in our organization, which we really appreciate. You know, we're only as strong as our members and our members' engagement, and you guys do a great job of reaching out to us, coming to our conferences, and also reaching out to your legislators when there are county issues that we need help on. One of my roles as executive director is to visit. I try to visit about half the counties a year, so I'll try to do one half one year and the other half the next year. So a lot of times I'm on the road and I'm able to visit a lot of different county courthouses. I always love coming to the Berry County Courthouse. I love the third floor, the top floor up here with all the woodwork and everything. So I do have a presentation I'm going to run through. I think Michael's going to kind of move the slides for me. Feel free to interrupt me as I go along. If you have any questions or if you'd like to wait to the end, that's fine too. So the first slide here just gives a little overview of MAC leadership. We have 16 members on our board of county commissioners, 2 seats from each of the 6 regions. We meet 4 times a year at each of our conferences, and then 1 time in June, and usually November and December. And our elections are typically held in August. In this August, we will have seats up in regions 1, 2, 3, and 5, and an at-large seat. We recently had Don Parker, county commissioner from Livingston County, recently resigned, so that seat will be actually up, but we're not going to vote on that until this fall. Next slide. Just some County 101 information. Our smallest county has about 2,100 people in it, in Keweenaw County, which is, of course, right at the top of the UP. Largest county is Wayne County. Counties employ more than 38,000 people statewide. That ranks Michigan 42nd across the country. And just from a recent EIG report, 60 of 83 counties of Michigan are shrinking. Next slide. This list kind of goes over some of the priorities for this 2020 session as we're finishing up this 2020 session. By no means a comprehensive list of everything we're working on, but some of the top items we'll be looking at, and I'll get into more detail in future slides. So establishing stable funding for trial courts. This came out of the Trial Court Funding Commission recommendations. There's about 8 recommendations that the commission came out with. To note, a real priority right now before October 17th is to remove the sunset. So right now, if you remember when the Trial Court Funding Commission was created, there was a ability, or there was the law passed that allowed counties to charge fees for those who are using the court system. Had that law not been passed, it would have cost counties about $300 million statewide. So that is due to sunset in 2020. We need to have that sunset extended. We'll continue to work on some of these recommendations that look at how courts are funded, but it is imperative that we get that pushed out. So we do have a bill introduced by Sarah Leitner. She's a former county commissioner from Jackson County, and we're working on getting that passed hopefully before they break for the summer, because with it being election year, we will probably not see them until November, once they leave for the summer. This just, next slide just kind of goes into some of the details why it's important to be looking at the funding of the courts. As you can see, the majority of court funding comes from locals, 44% of it. And if you look at the trial court funding report, it goes into a lot more detail of some of the recommendations and how to fund the courts in the future. The next slide talks about reforming Michigan's system of financing local government. Of course, as you know, counties are funded in 2 primary ways: property taxes and state revenue sharing dollars. Some of the things we're talking about at the state level is how do we secure state revenue sharing dollars so the legislature can't go in and rate it and use it for other purposes, kind of putting it in a lockbox, if you will. Incidentally, with the new we had an interesting budget year last year, obviously. We have a new budget now. We're back in the budget process right away again. And just some highlights from that budget. PILT was fully funded. County jail reimbursement was funded. Secondary road patrol was funded. Veteran service grants were funded at the tune of $4 million. $15 million for PFAS cleanup, $10 million for census, and there was actually a 2.5% increase in county revenue sharing dollars this year as well. Last year we were able to get about 2.3%. So this will be the 6th year in a row we were able to get increases from the state on county revenue sharing dollars, which we're pretty proud about. Prior to that, we had seen cuts over the years. They're still haven't made up from all those cuts over the years, but we're trending in the right direction and looking at some ways how we can secure that going forward. Looking at the next slide, of course, infrastructure is always a topic, especially in Michigan where we have road issues, and now we're looking at PFAS issues. So we're making sure that there is funding available for PFAS cleanup. It's popping up in more and more communities and becoming more and more of an issue. I think I read somewhere that Michigan has more PFAS contaminated sites than any other state, but I also think we're doing more to test, and we're out in front of it a little more than some of the other states. If you want to go to the next slide, of course, roads, shoreline erosion is an issue. If we're talking about roads, of course, the governor bonded for $3.5 billion in roads. None of that money goes to local roads. That all goes to state roads. So we have some concerns about that. Now, just last week, the House introduced a package of bills that would remove the sales tax on gasoline and take those sales tax dollars and appropriate them towards local roads. And instead of running them through PA 51, the House put together a package where 60% would go to county roads and 40% would go to city roads. We're on a fence on it right now, and I'll explain why. That sales tax dollar just goes to constitutional revenue sharing and school aid fund. They have a bill that actually keeps the school aid fund whole, but they did not introduce a bill that would keep constitutional revenue sharing for cities, villages, and townships whole. So what does that mean? That means there could be potential pressure on the general fund to make up for those constitutional revenue sharing dollars, which in turn could take away statutory revenue sharing dollars for counties. So that's why I say we're on the fence. So our transportation committee actually had a long discussion about it yesterday. They have not taken a position on it until we get a little more information on how they want to backfill those revenue sharing dollars. We're not opposed to it by any means. We want to continue to the discussion. I think we're actually advocating that we feel actually more of that money needs to go to county roads, because we have 73% of the county road miles in the state that counties are responsible for, and various counties have dissolved their road commission at this point, so it does become a county department. So we were happy to see a plan put together that addresses the local road problem. So that's kind of where that is at right now. The next slide, of course, mental health is always an issue because it hits so many different county budget line items, whether it's the jail, and we support any sort of diversion programs and deflection programs that help keep the mentally ill out of the jails, because that's not really where they need to be. But we want to make sure that those local dollars are kept local as well for our community mental health groups, and that's something we've been advocating for over the years as well. The next slide. Ensuring state covers costs for property tax exemptions. This gets at, if you remember the disabled veteran property tax exemption from a few years ago, obviously something we're supportive of. We appreciate our veterans, but it came at a cost to locals, and it was a vote that the state took. And our position on it is if the state wants to take or wants to provide a tax exemption to a specific group, the state should pay for it. So it should be an state income tax exemption or something like that. So we are working with the state and the veteran groups to kind of put a plan together that would make sure that those local dollars stay local, but if there is a tax exemption, the state would pay for it. Right now, it's looking like it could be some sort of reimbursement where the locals could go to the state and say, okay, here are my property tax exemptions. Send me a check back. So we're waiting on the bills to be introduced, but we do have some probably about 3 or 4 bills that'll be introduced on that. And then we're looking to use that as a model going forward as we look at property tax exemptions. The next slide, opioids, obviously a huge issue across the country and especially in Michigan. It's led to more than 2,000 deaths in 2018 alone. There's obviously a very large court case going on. Our role in that is to make sure that any sort of funding that could possibly come to the state from a state settlement, of course there's individual counties that have filed suit, but any sort of state settlement, we want to make sure those dollars are funneled to locals as well. If you remember the tobacco settlement a few years ago, there was a very large settlement that went to the state, but none of those dollars came to locals, and that's really where the issue is and where the costs are occurring, especially at the county level. I mean, cities have some, but really at the county level, if you look at medical examiners, your jails, your sheriff's departments, so many different areas of the county budget is hit by this crisis that we want to make sure those dollars fund to locals. Next slide. Prohibiting the use of deed restrictions on property valuations. This gets back at the dark stores issue that's been going on for a long, long time. They recently reheard the case last June at the tribunal. That was the originating case, City of Escanaba versus Menards. We have not heard of a new ruling out of the tribunal on that yet. We are expecting one probably by this June. So we could see a very favorable decision for local units of government, or we could see the same decision. We're not quite sure, but we do have bills ready to go. We're working with the bill sponsors on getting movement on those. We really think we can get some traction on the deed restriction issue. And what that issue is that when these big box retailers come in, they'll put deed restrictions on their properties. They'll move down the street, and then basically nothing can move into that property because it's deed restricted. And they sell everything, so you can put a church or a go-kart track in there, and it really causes, or it stays vacant. And then they'll use that vacant property as their comparable when they go to when they get assessed, causing the bottom to fall out on those properties. When the reality is those big box retailers are using as many services as your residents are, your small businesses are, and you have to pay for those services. So what happens? Millages end up going up, so your residents and small businesses end up footing the bill for these big box retailers that aren't really paying their fair share. So it becomes an equity issue when you look at it, and we'll be continuing to work on getting those bills moved. Slide 14. 4-year county commissioner term bills. This is something we've talked about for many years. We think it's ridiculous that county commissioners should have to run every 2 years. there's a learning curve involved. There's a lot of reasons we're among only 5 states in the nation that have 2-year county commissioner terms. Every other countywide elected is a 4-year term. So we have a package of bills that have moved out of they moved out of House committee. They're in Ways and Means Committee in the House. Now they're just trying to figure out when would that election occur, presidential year or gubernatorial year. As an association, we don't care. We just would like to see 4-year county commissioner terms. When they do it is not our issue. So we're letting the bill sponsors kind of work through that. Slide 15, obviously a lot of media on this, the coronavirus response. The federal government has appropriated $8.3 billion for public health actions. So your local public health entities should begin to see some of the dollars flow down for prevention primarily at this point. You know, we haven't had an issue in Michigan, thankfully, but we're encouraging you to look at the CDC website, and there's also a Michigan coronavirus website for up-to-date information. The next slide kind of gets into our policy committees, and I apologize, you guys might have had an earlier version of we kind of did some updating with some of the things that have been happening, but the next slide gets at our policy committees. Many of you folks have participated in the past or are participating in our policy committees. This is when they meet. You don't have to come in person. You can remote in, whether it be video conferencing or conference calling, but this is really where all our platforms are made, where we get our marching orders from our membership on positions. So I encourage you to participate if you can. And you know, your input is very important. Slide 17, just a website that we've kind of designed. It's a county commissioner forum. It's kind of a message board for county commissioners to get out and interact with each other. One of the things we often hear about from our conferences is that folks love interacting with other county commissioners, and our commissioners do a great job of doing it in their geographic regions. This is a way to do it outside of that, so you can hear what maybe some issues are going on in the UP or northern lower Michigan or southeast Michigan. But you can just register at that website, and you can kind of go on there and just see what folks are talking about. We do have a MAC pack. It is not a large pack by any means, but we do use it to support those 27 former county commissioners in the legislature. We also use it to help those who are in leadership in some of our committees, the more important committees to us. So if you are able, we'd appreciate any sort of donation to our MAC pack. Slide 19 kind of goes over your government affairs team. Of course, Dina Bosworth's been with MAC for about 10 years now as Director of Government Affairs. Megan Kite, she handles our health and human services and judiciary issues, and she does a great job with that. And then Michael Ruddock handles kind of some environmental issues. He's moving into a little bit of a transportation role. But if you ever do have any questions about any of our committees or anything, Michael's the one to ask, and he can kind of point you in the right direction. Slide 20. We do have we do 2 conferences every year. We do a legislative conference in the spring and an annual conference usually in late summer, early fall. Our April conference is coming up from 15th to 17th. We are looking at if we would need to cancel it, what our options are. We're not to that point yet. Actually, our registrations are up faster than they've ever been. We've sold out all our sponsorships. There doesn't seem to be a concern among our membership about it, but we are watching to see if we would need to do something. We wouldn't want to put anyone in any harm's way. That'll be in Lansing, of course, 15th through 17th. And then our annual conference this fall will be in Kalamazoo from the 16th to 19th. Slide 21 kind of goes over we have various programs we provide through the association. We use these programs to make sure we don't have to have any dues increases. So these are the programs. You guys participate in a variety of them. We appreciate that. But yeah, we use these to support our counties, make their jobs easier, our county administrator jobs easier, and also support the association. And then finally, slide 22 is our communication services or methods. We've got a Facebook page, a Twitter, Instagram. We do a podcast every so often, which is kind of an audio version of our weekly legislative update. Hopefully you're getting those updates. We do an every other month newsletter. We just try to keep you informed of everything that's going on as much as possible, so you're well informed when your legislators are in town or if you have constituent questions. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any questions? Ben?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for your presentation and for your advocacy for our county. With the transportation issue, Berry County was rated by some organization recently as having the best county road network in Michigan. And that's something we jealously want to keep. And we know that investment needs to keep flowing into local dollars, into local resources to keep it that way. what are MAC's priorities, or what are the things you look for in a transportation plan before MAC can support it?
Well, you've got PA 51 out there, and there's been a long-going discussion about PA 51. And I don't think there'll ever be a overhaul to PA 51 at this point, or not in the near future. Now, you're seeing a variety of ways of getting around that, right? You have the governor bonding for $3.5 billion, which is going to bring a large influx for state roads. And now you have this transportation package from the House that's actually going to give no money to MDOT. It's only going to give it to counties and cities. So, like I said about the package, we're on the fence about it. We like the way it's going. We just want to make sure that those revenue sharing dollars are somehow taken care of. And they verbally have said that. They verbally have said they want to keep locals whole. So keeping that, we as an association have to be very careful of the rural-urban discussion, right? The urban counties think they're donators to the urban roads, and but I think if we can get some sort of agreement or feel comfortable with a reimbursement on that revenue sharing dollars, I think we would be supportive of that package. And like I said, we're asking for more to actually get to come to counties. So,
Great. Thank you, Steve.
yes.
Yeah, since our SMART meeting, we had a State of the Union by President Trump, and he mentioned about rural broadband. Have you heard anything along any line for assistance that way?
Not from the state level, from the federal level, yes. I think there are some grants available. I think the USDA has some federal grants available that allow for rural broadband, and I think the FCC is putting together some grants that would be focused on some rural broadband, and they both focus on different groups. And I don't know the details, but we can get you some. I can talk to Michael. Nothing really, not a lot of discussion at the state level, but more from the federal level.
We'd like any information
Sure.
you could get
Yeah.
us, appreciate it.
Yep, we can send it over.
Anybody else have any questions for Steve? David?
On four-year commissioner terms, what's your sense if that bill makes it out to the floor?
It's a great question. I mean, we've been talking about this for years, like probably 15 years. This is the farthest we've gotten it. And, it is a lame duck session, and it kind of lines up nicely for a lame duck bill that maybe gets pushed through at the end of the year if we can get folks on board. I think some of the union groups had some concerns about it being on a gubernatorial year, and so they kind of voiced those concerns and kind of cooled it off. But I think we've kind of talked to them and said, when you look at the statistics of county commissioners and when the turnover of offices, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect county commissions are not that partisan. They don't get that partisan. So, I'd give it 60-40 right now. We got it it passed out of the elections committee unanimously. So now we're sitting in the Ways and Means Committee, and we're just waiting for them to kind of work things out with the bill sponsor there. So,
Okay. Process, is that a 60-day process, or is that a unlimited time frame for them to?
no, it would have to be passed by the end of this year.
Okay.
Those bills would have to be passed because that session resets at the end of the year. I think the year they're looking at doing it in was 2024 would be the first year that would be the first 4-year county commissioner, or 2022 if they decided to go into the gubernatorial. So, but once it would be passed, it wouldn't take any sort of time frame.
Okay. Thank you.
Say, Representative Leitner is a sponsor of that, and she is a former county commissioner, so she's really up on all the challenges we have at 2-year terms.
Yeah, and the other bill sponsor on it, Ann Boland, she's a former township clerk, actually. So,
The sheriff has a question.
sure.
On that topic, has there been any discussion on staggering, like 4-year terms, but presidential and the
Yeah.
governor, and stagger them that way rather than everybody getting elected all at once?
Yeah, there has been. It becomes a little more complicated on that and how the mechanism works. I think that's still an option on the table. I think they'd prefer to do them all on 1 year and do it that way, but that's still an option on the table. There has been discussion about it.
Any other questions for Mr. Curry?
Is there a Senate sponsor to that package?
Yeah, Ed McBroom has the Senate bills, but those haven't moved at all yet.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thank you.
Safe travels today.
Thanks.
Do we need to take a break?
I'm good.
All right, let's keep moving. Items for consideration.
Madam Chair, I move for approval of prepaid invoices in the amount of $2,287,501.19. Item B, approval of claims in the amount of $85,189.20. Item C, approval of commissioners' reimbursement mileage in the amount of $651.43.
Second.
Moved by Gibson, support by Smelker. For the approval of transfers and disbursements, approval of prepaid invoices in the amount of $2,287,501.19. Approval of claims in the amount of $85,189.20, and approval of commissioner reimbursements mileage in the amount of $651.43. Discussion. Hearing no discussion, the clerk will call the roll.
Geiger,
Yes.
Gibson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Smelker,
Yes.
Connor,
Yes.
Wing.
Yes, the item is approved.
Item D, approval of the attached letter supporting the Village of Nashville's grant application to the Michigan Economical Development Corporation, MEDC, and authorize the chairperson to sign.
Support.
Moved by Gibson, support by Geiger, for the approval of the attached letter supporting the Nashville's grant application to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, the MEDC, and to authorize the chairperson to sign. Discussion.
Madam Chair, the letter has been updated, and Commissioners, I did send you this morning a copy of the grant application. It is massive. It's 93 pages.
Wow.
But it just goes to show that this is important to the Village of Nashville, and we would appreciate any support that you might offer.
Any other discussion?
Second.
I got that.
All right, got it. Let's do it.
Hearing no further discussion, the question before the board is approval of the attached letter supporting Nashville's grant application to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, MEDC, and to authorize the chairperson to sign. The clerk will call the roll.
Gibson,
Yes.
Jackson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Smelker,
Yes.
Connor,
Yes.
Geiger,
Yes.
Wing.
Yes, the item is approved. Unfinished business, we have none. New business. County Administrator's Report.
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chairperson's Report. I can't believe it's March 10th already. Been a busy first week. I typically have a night meeting every day of the first week of March. So I've been burning the candle at both ends. This week we have election today, and I have Johnstown Township tomorrow. And then I'll see you all on Tuesday. Commissioner Connor?
Thank you. This is my busy week, so I'll have a big report at the next Board of Commissioners meeting. But I did attend the Orangeville Township meeting last Tuesday. They are going to have a millage on the August ballot for their fire department. I also attended the Compensation Commission's meeting last Wednesday. Heather and I tag-teamed on that and talked about the role of commissioners and some of the things that they do. And I also attended, it's called Homeward Bound. It's right now it's in the beginning stages. They have filed for a nonprofit. It's regarding the homeless people in Berry County. They're working with mental health. There's some advocates that are working with these people to try to get them the help that they need. So we're going to have our next meeting on April 4th at 10 o'clock. Location to be determined. I'm trying to secure a conference room for them.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Gibson?
I'm all set. I'm starting my cycle this Thursday.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yep, same thing. We're just kind of getting started. We did have our health department meeting last Thursday, had an extensive conversation about the coronavirus and what's happening internationally as well as nationally. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think we feel that there's getting a lot of media attention, but not really a lot of bite right now in there. That the death rate with the coronavirus is not exceeding what it's been of the normal flu. The flu is killing far more people than this is at this point, but It's always good to have these reminders and precautions of all the safety things that we can do to prevent the spread of the disease. So it was a good conversation. Had an unfortunate incident where Joe, the chairman, Joe Brailer, fell in the parking lot and required some medical attention. So that kind of slowed the meeting down. So it was just an interesting morning. But like Vivian, I'll have a lot more on the next report. So.
Commissioner Smucker?
Went to the same health board meeting as Dave. Just started my township meetings, went to Carlton and Village of Freeport last night, and everything is running business as usual.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Parker?
This week is very light because of elections. Both places that we have our meetings for Township and Village of Middleville will be where they're having elections. So that'll go into next week, which will really compound next week, so it'll be interesting. Got the other meeting next Thursday at Grace. You might want to announce that.
I will.
Okay.
Commissioner Geiger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This Saturday at 3:00 p.m., there will be a public forum hosted by the local government accountability group. I'll be speaking at that. It's a local group of citizens that wants to know more about what's going on with our facilities projects and millages. That starts at 3:00 p.m. this Saturday at the Titan Center.
Thank you, sir. And we are hosting that public forum on March 19th at Grace Community Church, just outside of Nashville. If you make it into town, you went too far. At 7 o'clock, I think. All right,
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Invite your friends.
Yeah, it's a nice venue. I've
They're
been
friends.
there several times. So, limited public comment. At this time, any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so for up to 3 minutes.
I just wanted to let everybody know that today we're going to have DeWind come down and start the pumps at Cloverdale and Crooked. So we just want to let you know in case you get people calling and wondering if the pumps are running. They're not. They're just, I mean, they are, but we're just getting them up and
PMs.
going. Yeah, making sure they're ready to go when we're allowed.
Thank you, ma'am.
So, all right, thank you.
They're running but not moving water.
Right.
Okay.
Any other public comment this morning? Hearing none, is there any other business to come before the board? There being no further business and without objection, the board will now adjourn.